What is the most disturbing book you have ever read? The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. It's about a teenage girl who is abused and eventually murdered by her foster mother, with the foster mother enlisting her own kids and other neighborhood children in the abuse murder. Book is bad enough, but turns out it's based on a true story, so even worse. A Child Called It. It is a true story memoir by a man who was horribly tortured by his mother as a child. Edit. There's a lot of comments saying that there has been a lot of controversy around the books and whether the story is true or not. Apparently it might not be. Personally, I read the book as a teenager and didn't really question it or look up the writer. The story has just stuck with me, even though I don't remember a lot of details anymore. It is actually a relief if this is not a true story, but it does not erase the fact that this book is still the most disturbing one I've ever read. Johnny Got His Gun. Guy slowly finds out throughout the course of the book that he's blind, deaf, dumb and lost all his limbs. In the end, he communicates to the nurse by smacking his against the wall to tap out the Morse code for "kill me." House of Leaves. The book is literally designed to mess with the reader. For instance, I was like halfway through it once, and I noticed the word house was in a dark blue ink. I thought it was so weird and barely discernible from black. Then I flipped back through the book. House was in dark blue ink every time it appeared. V.C. Andrews novels, particularly Flowers in the Attic. They were Gothic horror romance novels published in the 80s 90s. The books all followed the same general plot. Each series told the rags to riches story of an extremely young teenage girl who experiences some sort of family tragedy, such as parents unexpectedly dying, which forces her to go live with some previously unknown and typically very wealthy relatives. This usually causes the main character to uncover some pretty disturbing family secrets, often about her own paternity. But the weirdest part about these books is that there is always some sort of consensual incest going on, whether it's between half-siblings, step-siblings, or cousins. It's always there. In every series she writes. Sexual assault is also a constant theme in the novels. What I find truly disturbing about these books is the fact that they are specifically marketed towards young teenage girls. To this day you can still find them in the young adult fiction section of libraries and bookstores. When they first came out they garnered a pretty intense cult following. There were a few cases of certain libraries and schools banning them, but as the years passed people largely forgot about them. They've recently experienced a resurgence in popularity after many failed attempts at making decent movie adaptations. An entire collection of Lionsgate feature-length films were made of the Flowers in the Attic series, one for each book. You can watch them on HBO or Hulu sometimes. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. It takes place on an alternative Earth where the Cold War's escalated into nuclear destruction and only a supercomputer lived along with 5 humans. It comes from the perspective of one man under the order of AM Allied Master Computer, later known as AM Aggressive Menace. A short read, but definitely a must-read for all sci-fi readers. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The stories are okay, but the illustrations, those will haunt you for the rest of your life. When I was younger I would leave that book in the garage because I didn't want to be in the same house with it. I still have nightmares about some of those images. Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill, son of Stephen King. It's about a guy who likes weird things, so he buys the soul of a guy's stepfather for $1,000. He is sent the stepfather's suit and weird things start to happen. I slept with my light on for weeks after I read it. Gerald's Game was the first Stephen King book I ever read. I was 11. Suffice it to say, it made an impression. Features everything from incest to animals eating human flesh to boogeymen to mental and physical isolation. As an adult, reading Come Closer by Sarah Gran gave me the creeps. In short, it is a novel about a woman who is slowly being possessed by a demon. Watching her make these terrible choices without her understanding why or being able to stop her life from being shattered was harsh but gripping. I'm Legend by Richard Matheson. The thought of being completely alone every single day with absolutely no one and nothing to talk to or give you company in a world that is absolutely hellbent on killing you. I have no mouth. And I must scream. Really puts the concept of hell in perspective. Especially once you understand the title's double meaning. It kinda ruined all sci-fi AIs for me though, making them seem like spam bots compared to AM's infinite dysphoria and rage. The Fireman. It was the first time I ever understood how people felt when they felt powerless, and it took something as horrific as a stone being forced into someone's mouth. I never really understood it before, because as long as I've lived, I've never really taken any shit from people. I'm strong. I'm big and my voice alone commands the attention of my peers. It rent my heart in pieces reading it. I could barely keep reading after some scenes due to how emotionally vulnerable it made me feel. Seeing the main character physically not able to do anything but suffer the injustices of what was essentially a madwoman's cult. I'd sit there begging the pages for a deus ex machina that refused to come. I'd hold my breath for sentences at a time. This book is a very rough read for anyone as sympathetic as I felt reading it. I do not remember the title of the book, so if anyone knows it, I would highly appreciate if you shared it. The title sounded kinda German, if I remember correctly. There was a book I read during elementary school about a kid who got bullied because of his physical appearance. Like kids told him his hands were ugly and he went to the zoo and put them inside the lion's cage, so they ate them off. Then they told him his arm stumps looked like ugly sausages and he stuck them in an elevator door, so it ripped them off when closing. They told him his red hair looked like spaghetti, if I remember correctly, and he grabbed a pair of scissors and cut it. They told him his ears were too big, and yup, he chopped them off. In the end, only his head remained, and the other kids used it to play soccer. If I remember correctly, they also ripped off his nose, because it gave his head an irregular shape to play with. After some time they got bored of it, and left him abandoned. If I remember correctly, an animal found him, and asked what happened to him. And he told his story. It was supposed to have the moral loving and accepting yourself despite what others think or say about you. But it was disturbing how the kid mutilated himself just to appease the others. A Child Called It is a really ducked up account of horrendous child abuse, allegedly based on a true story. I really hope it was exaggerated. My Sweet Audrina by Virginia Andrews is pretty screwed up. Even by her standards, she also wrote the Flowers in the Attic and Heaven series. As far as I know, Audrina is a standalone, which is probably for the best. True to form, it's about a ducked up family and how they duck up child raising to an unholy degree. Misery by Stephen King is kind of entry level disturbing and always worth a read. Blind Faith by Ben Elton is brilliant. Set in a future London where evangelical Christians, anti-vaxxers, and perpetually documenting your life online have all become social norms. If you want to fear for your children and grandchildren, read this. Greg Egan is a great author for mind-breaking concepts. If you're into computer science or theoretical math and physics, if the idea of trying to picture physically exploring multiple versions of infinity sounds like your kind of thing, I highly recommend him. He's one of those authors where, after I finish a book, I have to try to remember how real life actually works. And the bit with the programmer playing God did nothing good for my wavering faith. And my perpetual favorite, a little known work called Under Plum Lake by Lionel Davidson. It's probably not disturbing if you know you can trust your mind. But if you've suffered from dissociation, this one may well shake you. Of course. Being someone who's suffered from dissociation and the attendant gaslighting probably makes most of these kinds of books worse. And is probably why so many books affect me so deeply. Revival by Stephen King messed me up. The ending really disturbed me. I don't remember reading anything before or since that had such unrelenting tension ratcheting up. They're making a movie, of course. FK that noise and count me out. I still think of it sometimes. A little different, but it's called High on Arrival by Mackenzie Phillips. It's a memoir, and it's about growing up with 70s rock stars. Her father was the creator of the Mamas and the Papas California Dreamin', and he was very abusive to her throughout her life. The story is filled with drugs, rape and incest. But the worst part is how she seems to idolize all of these rock stars still. And she puts off the sense that she's lucky to have had that life. This book really ducked with me because it made me realize that we idolize this classic rockstar lifestyle. But looking back, many of them were addicts, rapists, pedophiles, and dealing with their own horrible mental health issues on top of that. After reading it, I can't enjoy classic rock, especially the Rolling Stones, at all. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Some of you have probably seen the movie. The movie is to the book what a Hot Wheels car is to a real Formula 1 car. The amount of sadistic detail actually made me wonder whether the author had first-hand experience. The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. If you thought the Nazis committed atrocities during WWII, the Japanese really gave them a run for their money. The Road. I know others have mentioned this. I tell people it is the best written book. I will strongly encourage other people not to read. In many ways, on many levels, it poignantly portrayed suffering, ruin, what humans can be both good and horrifically bad, and why it may not even matter. People can point to some of the more shocking passages, infant cannibalism, but can't convey how deftly he wrote them. So it wasn't shock value or voyeurism, but rather let the reader feel the abject horror through the eyes of a jaded man just trying to take care of his kid, and the kid just trying to hold on to the scraps of innocence and purity, which is amazing he even has, since he was born into a post-apocalyptic world. The despair of trying to shield your child, the empathy with both parents and various choices and roadblocks they faced. Well, the road takes place where the air is filled with grit and dust and ashes. I feel like reading it got some of that on my soul and psyche. Do not read it. The world is a slightly darker place due to that book, which remains a magnificent, masterful piece of art. Still, do not read it. Click subscribe. If you enjoyed this video,